Ninjago is approaching its 15th anniversary, and more specifically, it is approaching 15 years of a very solid line of LEGO sets. There are of course a lot of different outliers, and I do think that is worth to note one day, but for the most part I really do think LEGO does a very good job when delivering us some fantastic Ninjago sets. But with the abundance that we do have, the question often comes up of what is the best Ninjago set, and of course that criteria is extremely loose and it could come down to many different interpretations, but I do think it is a very interesting question. So for today, I'm going to give, in my opinion, the top 10 Ninjago sets of all time, and I do have a very specific criteria for this, and I will let you know it in a moment. But if you do agree or disagree with this list, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I do think there are a lot of different opportunities for what could be in this list, but as it stands, in my opinion, this is mine. Like I said, I did set off with a criteria to make this list, and I do think it is fairly simple. The first thing I'm going to judge it off of is the price of the set. I'm going to base it specifically off of its original retail price, because some sets on the aftermarket nowadays is just completely ludicrous and it would make a very different list. But I do think judging it off of its initial retail price is a very solid way of looking at it. The second part of the criteria for me is the overall quality of the build of the set. Of course, you could have a very solid vehicle, a very solid location. There are some very good Ninjago builds within some of the sets. So the better the build, the better it's going to be for me, because of course, some of them are definitely better than others. And the third thing I want to judge it off of is the minifigures. I want to judge it based on what you actually get within the set. Do you get some solid minifigures? Are they just a bunch of mediocre ones at best? Are there any exclusive minifigures? I do think it is all very important to judge off of, and the overall criteria is a very comfortable mold of the lot, because you could have a set, for example, that's a very bad build but with good minifigures, or a set with really good minifigures and also a very good build. There are tons of examples of this, but on an overall, I do think it's a very good way of looking at it. There are some other very smaller little tidbits that I'm gonna also be basing it off of, but those are the three main things for the most part. Like I said, the smaller things are, what does it represent from the show? Is it canon to the show? Those are some very important aspects to me, and I do think it does make a lot of sense. But like I said, I do think the price for what you're getting is a big factor, and the minifigures and the build is the biggest factor of all. But let me not waste any more of your time, and let's get into the top 10. Coming in at number 10 is actually the Overlord Dragon Battle Set. This is from Legacy 2021, and honestly, I do think this is an amazing set for what you are getting. For £25 or $30, you were getting a set that represented one of the most iconic scenes from all of the show, and it was all you needed by all accounts to be able to recreate that scene. The main staple of the build is the Overlord Dragon, and it's a fantastic dragon at that. It is built extremely well, I think it represents the Overlord extremely well, and it definitely does have the accuracy that you do want from a dragon. And that was the main staple of the set. I think it was fantastic for what it was. There was no side build, there was nothing to distract you, they put all of their efforts into the one singular dragon, and I do think that was really good. And the thing is that the minifigures it came with was also pretty good. You did get a version of the Overlord. This one is more based off of his Season 3 outfit, but honestly I don't mind it because it's just a nice tidy addition. Obviously the dragon is also meant to represent the Overlord, so you essentially did get two incarnations of the same character in this instance. And of course you did get a golden Lloyd to go along with it, which is honestly a perfect little finishing touch. This is, by all accounts, all you needed to recreate the final battle. Like I said, this is the representation that you did need. Of course you could go a little step further and get the gold dragon to go along with it, but I do think this is essentially all you needed to recreate that iconic scene. And I think for the solid build, the solid minifigures, and the fact it was fairly cheap, goes in and makes a very solid number 10 pick. Number 9 is actually coming in at the very same price point, being a £25 or $30 set, and it was in fact the Raid Zeppelin from Skybound. And I do think this is one that not many people think about, but in reality it was really good for what you were getting. This set had a really good build. I do think the ship that you got in this set was absolutely fantastic. It had the details that you wanted and was a very good representation of what you actually had in the show. It did also come with that little Zane side build, which is in my opinion the only detractor from the set because it's not a canon vehicle, but it doesn't take away from the fact that the main build got all of the love that it did need. And for that reason, it is a very solid set, and it wouldn't really have stood out to me outside of that. However, this set is completely made up of exclusive minifigures. Doubloon, Clancy, and Zane were all completely exclusive to the Raid Zeppelin and never appeared in any other sets. And I think that is one of the biggest things for me. This set is completely exclusive in that sense, and I do think that is really cool considering that it was a fairly low price point. And of course, it would be a really good way to be able to complete your Skybound collection, because it's not like it was 3 exclusive minifigures that didn't exactly matter. It was 2 of the high-ranking officials of the Sky Pirate Army, and of course the Ice Ninja himself. Honestly, for a very standard set, it was really good for that reason. So in my opinion, it is more than worthy of the number 9 spot, because not only is it solid in all of those regards, it was just a simply very fun set. I particularly remember having a lot of fun when I did get it, and I'm definitely glad I still have it in my collection to this very day. Coming in at number 8 is actually the Titan Mech Battle set from Possession, and honestly, this set was a gem even back in the day. This set is essentially the Raid Zeppelin, but just simply better. Of course, it does have side build syndrome, which is completely fine, but honestly doesn't take away from the fact that this build has 2 mechs that are really well articulated, very well put together, and definitely are up to the standard that you would expect from a mech. This set did go for about £40 or $60, so it is a little more expensive, and I will say there are a lot more expensive sets later on in the video. But what I will say is that for that price, like I said, you got very solid sets. You basically got 2 sets in one, because some of these mechs would just be their own set back in the day, and the thing is that the minifigure selection was also absolutely incredible. You had 2 generals from the Ghost Army, of course being Banter and Goltar, and then you had Jay, Zane, and Nia to go along with it. So again, no army building characters, no unnamed ghosts, it was purely main and named characters. This was honestly just one of the better sets you could have gotten, especially for the time, because it was just having everything that you wanted, and to this very day I do still display this set. I absolutely adore it, and I can personally say that it was really good to get, so I have to give it the credit that it definitely deserved, and it had to go at number 8. The number 7 spot is actually coming from Season 8, and I do think this is a fairly well received set in general, but I have to say, I really do like it in particular. It is the Kilo vs Samurai X set. In my opinion, this is by far one of the better sets that we did get. We got the Samurai X mech for Pixel, which I still consider the definitive Pixel mech, and also we got Kilo's bike, which is so unique and so imposing at the exact same time. The bricks and the choices that they did for the design is absolutely stellar looking, and I do think it was honestly overall a fantastic build. It was coming in at £45 or $50, and it was a little bit high, but honestly I could justify it for just the sheer scale of them. In reality, the pictures do not do this set a lot of justice. The mech is a fairly solid size, and the bike is absolutely huge. I didn't realize how big they were re-looking at the images until I pulled my Kilo bike back from my shelves. And the thing is that it didn't even end there, because even though it only came with 3 minifigures, it was still 3 fantastic minifigures. Of course, you got the new Samurai X minifigure, which was a really nice one, and one of the best Pixels minifigures that we've gotten. We got Kilo, which to this very day is one of the most expensive Ninjago minifigures, and honestly, a really well designed one at that. And then of course, we got Sons of Garmadon J, which was exclusive to this set. So the minifigure selection, even though very small, was absolutely amazing. And I do think it did all come together to make a fantastic looking set, and honestly one of the best ones from the Sons of Garmadon wave, which was already a very solid lineup to begin with, but this one was by far a standout, and definitely worth it back in the day. Of course nowadays it's a little bit more, but like I said, I'm not really basing it off of that, so this was more than deserving of number 7. The number 6 slot is actually going to a more recent set. It is the Wolf Mask Shadow Dojo set, and honestly, this one does have a lot of really redeeming aspects. For one, the build is just absolutely amazing. Each aspect of the build just feels so carefully curated. I can't argue with how much detail there truly is. Dragon's Rising doesn't have a lot of locational sets, so for one to come out this good looking really can't go unnoticed for me. And the thing as well, that is another fairly major aspect, is just simply how many minifigures you got. I will say, this is one of the best ways you could have gotten a lot of the minifigures of that wave. It came with 4 of the Climber Ninja, and the only one you were missing was Colin J, and J's isn't even canon, so if you wanted a fully canon Climber Ninja lineup, you would only be missing 1 just from this set. And the other thing is that you got most of the Wolf clan as well. You got a standard Wolf Mask Warrior, which was pretty good, but then you also got Cinder, Jordana, and Raz. So this one set covered most of what you needed for your minifigure collection alone. The only small thing for me is the fact that it is a fairly high price. It was £105 or $120, but I will say, you were getting a lot for this set. There was a lot that went into this set, a lot of really good aspects to this set, and I really do think it is worth it for what it's worth. The only thing I will say is that because of the magazines that some countries release like the UK, a lot of these minifigures are now no longer exclusive, but I do know at the time, a lot of them were, so it is really dependent on whether or not you did have the magazines in your respective country. But I will say on an overall, this was, in my opinion, one of the best sets that have come out of Dragon's Rising. I feel like there's not much debate on that, but there are a couple, in my opinion, that are better. But as of now, this one is more than worthy of the number 6 spot. The number 5 spot, however, is, in my opinion, one of the better Ninjago Dragon's Rising sets, and I'm gonna have to say, it is without a doubt the Thunderfang Dragon of Chaos set. This is the most recent set that is on this list, and I do think it's very much worthy of that stand-in. It is £65 or $70. It is a little bit high, but it was definitely very much worth it because of what you got. This is another one of those sets that basically are the main focus being Thunderfang. There is a very small side piece, but it is relevant to the story itself. But the build itself of Thunderfang is absolutely amazing. Another instance of a box or for the images not doing enough justice. Thunderfang is so imposing in person, and I can't get over how good the build actually is. It is so well put together, considering that it didn't look that way initially. It is just a fantastic build, and definitely one that you shouldn't skip out on, and this is also one of the few that are still on shelves, so it is probably a case of this is worth less currently than what is the original asking price. And the thing is that that's all well and good, but the minifigures were also fantastic as well. Of course it's different now, but this was actually the cheapest way to get Noct for a while. It is now the case there are cheaper routes to get him, and that's all well and good, but this, initially speaking, was the way to get Noct, and that was really cool. And also you got the Aaron minifigure, which was great, you got a Dragonian Warrior, which was great, and then you got the Lloyd and Nia, which were also fantastic. It did come with the Season 1 Sora, and that is, in my opinion, the only letdown of the set, but at least it did come with the new hair, so it was another way to get that as well. But I do have to say, the minifigure selection was also a very big plus. And I just think overall it's just one of the better instances of a Ninjago set. I do just think it is extremely well put together, and I do think it does succeed on all aspects when I did look at my criteria. So it had to be at the number 5. But we are now at number 4, just missing out on the podium, and this set is actually from Crystallized, and is the Nia Samurai X Mech set. It was a big standout in a wave of very solid sets at that. This set did come in at the same price as the Shadow Dojo. It was £105 or $120, and took a very different approach when it did come to using that budget. And instead of a very large, really detailed building, we got a very large, highly articulated, and very well put together mech. Honestly, the Samurai X Mech is by far one of the best ones we've ever got across the show. It is really cool and really does stand out in a Ninjago collection. I am looking at mine as we speak, and it is absolutely huge. It isn't the only standout of the set either. It did come with a little Dragonite, or those little crystallized dragons, if that's what the name was, and honestly, another very solid little addition. Definitely a nice little add-on to a set, and honestly, didn't get in the way of the mech in of itself. Just honestly, a very fun little piece to get on the side. But in similar vein to a lot of these other sets, this was honestly a very big standout in terms of the minifigures as well. Honestly, this had some of the best selections that we did get in Crystallized, even though a lot of the sets also did. But of course, we did get a Crystallized Warrior, which is completely fine, and that's all well and good, but the rest is where you get the standout. You got both Wu and Garmadon, which is very rare actually nowadays in a Ninjago set. Having both of the Spinjitzu brothers together, it was a really nice treat. You got the Nia minifigure, which was absolutely amazing. You got a Jay minifigure, which was a nice addition. And then you got two of the Crystal Council members. You got the Mechanic and you got Pythor. Both of them, I believe, were also unique to the set. Actually, for that matter, I believe 5 of the 8 minifigures were also exclusive to this set. Just a massive standout. And that was a really good selection in of itself. But you mark it off then with a new version of Lil Nelson. A very nice addition to any Ninjago minifigure collection. Honestly, just this lineup was absolutely amazing, and being paired up with one of Ninjago's best mechs was just a really big addition. And honestly, I do think on an overall, even though I do really like a lot of the Crystallized sets, this was the biggest standout for me. And honestly, I do think one of the best ones we did got from that wave, and honestly, one of the best waves that we did have for a very long time. So, it was more than worthy of number 4, and I hope you guys do agree with that. Taking the bronze medal though at number 3 was something from the very beginning of Ninjago. One of the first major sets that I do think a lot of people wanted, and it's not Garmadon's Dark Fortress, it is the Fire Temple. This is a set that honestly could be released today and I would be more than happy getting it. The build itself is absolutely gorgeous looking. I think all the different aspects of the temple itself were absolutely brilliant. And it didn't just stop at a very solid build. It did come with a full-fledged fire dragon. I think it was an amazing dragon build, one of the better dragon builds, and it would even interconnect with the temple as the temple had a splitting gimmick. Honestly, all round a fantastic build, a really good Ninjago set, and definitely a really strong start for the theme itself. This set honestly was pretty good, and it retailed for £92 or $120, and I have to say, you're basically again getting 2 sets in one. One of those dragons was an entire set before, and the temple was also could have been an entire set before. You're basically getting a 2 for 1, and I definitely think it was fantastic for that reason. And obviously to really end it all off, a fantastic minifigure selection. Of course, you got your Kai and your Zane. You got Zane in his regular outfit, which was fine. You got Kai DX, which was a nice addition. You got Nia, which was also pretty cool. The Spinjitzu brothers both returned, which was really nice. You had Wu in his black outfit as well, which was nice. You got Cruncher, which was another great addition. And finally, Samukai. Obviously, a very sought after minifigure. So, honestly, you weren't getting any bad characters again in this set. It is all the positive aspects I've said of every other set before now, just all crammed into one. And I'm gonna be honest, I definitely think this has to be worthy of the podium. It would have been higher if the other 2 sets just simply didn't exist. So let's get into those 2, but as of now the Fire Temple very rightfully gets bronze. But what does get silver, you may be asking? Well, it is actually coming from Hands of Time. It is, without a doubt in my opinion, the Dawn of Iron Doom set. And I have to say, this one really was a standout for me. This set quite literally has everything you could possibly ask for in a Ninjago set. Of course, the main feature being the Dawn of Iron Doom, a highly articulated, very unique and very well put together build. It is a very nice looking Ninjago mech, and still one of the best ones to this very day. It very much stands out in my Ninjago collection, and I feel like anyone who has it would definitely agree with that. It does have side build syndrome, and I will give it that as a negative, but I will say that the thing that it does come with does somewhat intertwine with Season 7 itself, because it's meant to serve as some sort of podium that's meant to serve alongside the Iron Doom. You could look at it as something that they use to help put the mech together, so I'm not honestly mad at it. But the thing is that doesn't really matter to me, because not only was the build absolutely fantastic, so were the minifigures. The lineup for minifigures in this set was absolutely amazing. You had Commander Blunk, which was the only one that was just a bit okay, because he was the only one that wasn't exclusive. But of course, you had Lloyd and Jay, and this was the only way to get both of these variants of their suits in their full version, which was quite nice. You also had the Hands of Time Wu, which was the only way to get him, and then you had both of the Time Twins. In my opinion, if this was done today, it would have only have had one of them, but to get both of the Time Twins in one set was absolutely amazing to see. And not only did it have both of the Time Twins, this was also the first time both of the villains also had their hair in the set. This was of course much more of a staple later on in Ninjago. Before this time, it wasn't really all that common, and it was a very nice touch at that, and definitely did just add to the value of the set. But I have to say, on an overall, this was just an amazing set. So many amazing good things about it, and not really much bad to actually say about it. And I do think on an overall, it is definitely worthy of the silver medal. But before we do get into the number one pick, I did just want to give one honorable mention, because I really do appreciate this set, but I didn't know where else to really put it. And it was the Lloyd CX spinner from 2012, because it was a way to get the full Lloyd minifigure, not in one of the most expensive sets of the wave. It was just simply put a really good way to get the Green Ninja, and I appreciate it for that very reason, but I just feel like it didn't really belong in this list in any way. But I wanted to shout it out regardless. But the number one pick, or the golden medal, has to go to the Battle for Ninjago City set. This set honestly had absolutely everything that you could want in a Ninjago build, in a Ninjago minifigure range, and a Ninjago overall quality. This set had absolutely everything. It had a fully detailed and amazing looking temple. All the details on the temple were absolutely amazing. It had different features, it had different aspects to it that really did solidify it as a fantastic Ninjago build. And not only did it have that, it also had the Overlord and his entire little walker piece. Honestly, both of these pieces put together is really interesting to see. And like a lot of other sets, I would argue that nowadays this would probably be two separate sets, so having them both together was just really nice, especially at the quality that they're at. And speaking of quality, this is the set that has some of the best Ninjago minifigures we've ever gotten. Of course, it comes with the Overlord, which is one of the most sought after minifigures to this very day. He is a fantastic minifigure and very much worth it. But this was also the only set that actually did come with the initial run of Stone Armor Ninja. The one downside is that Jay didn't get his Stone Armor variant in here, but just simply put, they just never did it. But the thing is that it doesn't really matter to me because we did get him later on. But the other ones, a completely exclusive Stone Armor Zane, the Stone Armor Nia, the Stone Armor Lloyd, getting all of them in this set was absolutely crazy to see. And honestly, those all ninja together and the Overlord could have been enough, but they added in a handful of ninjoids to go along with it. Honestly, what an amazing lineup of minifigures. The price of this set was £90 or $120, and I'm gonna be honest, again, I do think it was a very good price for what you were getting. I think you got a lot with this set, a lot of amazing aspects, a lot of amazing details, and to this very day, there is a reason this is one of the most sought after Ninjago sets that have ever been released. I think it kind of speaks for itself, considering how many people to this very day still talk about it. And for that reason, I feel like it has to pick the number one spot as the best Ninjago set. But that is my list, and I would love to know what you guys think when it does come to that list. Are there any picks you disagree with? Is there anything you think I'm missing? There are some obvious ones in the top of my head that I do feel like people would be wondering. For example, one of my personal favorite sets is the Monastery of Spinjitzu from Legacy. It is an amazing build, but personally speaking, I didn't put it in there because I just think the minifigure selection wasn't that good. I just think it didn't really inspire me when it did come to that aspect of the criteria. To be honest, I feel like that's where a lot of really good Ninjago sets did ultimately falter. I do think a lot of them just had really good builds, but really weak minifigures, because not only is the Monastery a good example of that, my all-time favorite set is the Movie Bounty, and again, only came with the Movie Ninja, didn't even have any villains. And the other one that also comes to mind is the Temple of the Ultimate Weapon, again being a case of minifigures just being quite weak. So that is why you wouldn't see any of those ones, but I do think the ones I have selected are very much worthy of going into this list, because it definitely exceeds on every range when it does come to the set. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys thought of this list, and if you would like me to put this criteria towards the worst of the Ninjago sets. I would love to do more lists like this if you do like these kinds of videos. But like I said, let me know what you do think. But on overall, if you did enjoy today's video, please consider subscribing. It's just really fun to have more people to discuss Ninjago with, and if you do want to support the channel even further, even though you're not obligated, please become a channel member. And a big shout out to the first of the Eternal Legends, which is Grandmaster Sensei 28208, or Dareth for short. Thank you very much, my friend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!